Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in negotiation, ethical influencing, and high impact conversations for business leaders who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and build greater connection, all while increasing profitability. This is the short form espresso shot of insight podcast interview to boost business performance using our 5 questions in around about 15 minutes format. I say 15, but we often go way over, but we'll see how we go. My guest today is Scott Leese. To put it in one short sentence, 6-time sales leader, 4 times founder, 3-time author. But to expand on it slightly further, Scott Leese Consulting was founded in 2016 with a focus on companies scaling from 0 to $25 million annual recurring revenue. He works with both domestic and international companies on sales strategy, playbook creation, rev ops processes, recruiting, as well as coaching and training and more. He teaches founders and leaders how to build scalable and successful sales organizations. Scott has spent the better part of the last decade building communities that provide people with a safe space to learn, grow, and develop their skills. And he's also authored 2 #1 Amazon best-selling books, Addicted to the Process and More Than a Number, and has recently co-authored From Rep to Manager with Ryan Walker. One of the reasons I really, by the way, Scott, the last thing I had to throw in there, I really loved on your website, and I think this sums up a lot about Scott. Maybe I'm wrong. Scott says, if you want somebody to do everything for you, I'm not your guy. If you want someone to teach you how to fish so you can do this yourself and never have to hire somebody like me again, I'm your guy. Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That was a great sentence. That was, I think it speaks volumes about your approach and why people value you so much. So let's dive straight in. So who's your ideal client? And what's the biggest challenges they tend to face?
Well, ideal client for me is somebody who's sort of at the Series A, Series B level. They've done some selling. They maybe have a couple salespeople, but now they need to turn it into like a scalable and repeatable process. And it's not something that they've done before, or at least done successfully before. And my ideal partner and client to work with is somebody who wants to learn how to do this. That's why I have that quote on the website. I'm not really interested if you come to me and say, hey, I just want you to, build all these things for me, do all this. I'm just going to be over here focusing on something else. I'm not really keen to do that. What I want is an active partner, somebody that I can show why we're going to build things the way we are. Here's how we're going to build this go-to-market strategy. Here's all the things that need to be in a sales playbook. And here's why we're building the operational process things this way. That way, once I'm not there, they understand the logic behind it. They participated in building it and architecting it. Right. That way they're, more invested to keep it going. And now they know how to do things moving forward. And like I said, maybe you don't need to hire somebody next time.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot going on there in the sense of, what got you here won't get you there. As you said, they're needing to expand that skill set, which sounds fascinating. But it's, as you said, it's more interesting that you want that particular type of person who actually wants to learn the why as well as the how. They want to actually get in there, but roll the sleeves up with you. Does that mean you tend to have quite more of a, what would you say, an alliance or a mentorship almost relationship rather than kind of a top-down consultant, third-party, exterior type relationship?
Yeah, I would call it an executive partnership.
Right.
A lot of early stage founders do not have the muscle of building and scaling sales orgs, and a lot of them have never even been a salesperson.
Right.
And so they have a lot of ideas about why things should be this way and why they shouldn't be this other way. And, it's nice to have somebody who has been at an executive level for a long time, who has done these things and this mission that you're trying to do, and you can spar with and bounce ideas off of. Sometimes I might support an idea. Sometimes I might say, well, that could work but here's the downside of that. And here's the upside. Here's the downside. Other times I'm going to say, that's a total shit idea, Al. And, here's why you shouldn't do that. And I'm going to prevent you from making a colossal mistake. So I call it an executive, C-level kind of partnership.
That's
like I said, part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to optimize for your ideal customer profile, right? That means get rid of people who are not a good fit for you. And, some of what I'm trying to do is just that.
Absolutely. I love the polarizing, as you said, if you want this, I'm not for you. If you want that sort of a relationship interaction, totally for you. So when we're thinking of these people, if some of the listeners out there might find themselves in some of that overlap in the Venn diagram, what are some of the common mistakes people make maybe before they find you? So what sort of are they trying to do it themselves? Are they getting in some sales reps? I mean, what are some of the errors that they're making, that they're feeling the pain, it's not working, and then they find you?
Well, I mean, there's a million and one things that people have done wrong. Where do I start? They try to sell to everybody all at once, so they don't have a narrow enough ideal customer profile.
Right.
That's one. They do not really understand their buyer persona. And so the things that they think are cool about their product are not actually what the buyers care about, nor the pains that they solve. I've seen people over-index for hiring salespeople with a particular industry's expertise. So, for example, let's say we were building real estate software of some kind, right? Well, rather than hiring software salespeople, they hire ex-real estate agents, something like this.
Right.
I've seen people hire a very expensive VP of sales early on who has no interest in being an individual contributor and actually like selling the product, and wants to kind of be a VP of spreadsheets and just strategize all day long. But the biggest killer is nobody puts together the actual process and playbook for what works. So even if a founder had some success, they didn't document anything. So now you try to go and scale, and there's no way for you to transfer your knowledge to whoever these people are that you've brought on board. What am I supposed to say when I'm on the phone?
Right.
How do I handle these particular objections? Who exactly am I supposed to sell to? What's my perfect client? What are the tools that we use? What process should we be using? And it's just chaos, right? And you can survive in a chaotic kind of wild, wild west environment up to a point. But if you're trying to build a business that's going to 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, you can't have the wild, wild west out there, right? Yeah. And I'm a big believer in setting things up for scale right away, rather than wild, wild westing it for years and then having all of this sort of technical debt, if you will. Now we have to go back and put all this process in place. So those are some of the common errors that I've seen.
That's fantastic. And there's a few points just to mention to the listeners there. So are excellent. Both the mix of whether, and I find this myself, whether you're working with an executive or business owner, so often they think they don't have time to reflect what's worked, what hasn't. So as you say, never mind not learning from the mistakes, they're not learning from their victories either. They haven't isolated what it was about it.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, they're not writing the SOP so that it might be in some way copyable and then improvable further from there. So structure earlier on, excellent stuff. So what is one valuable free action that the audience might take that they could implement that will help them with that issue? So it mightn't solve the problem, but at the very least will have them facing a more helpful direction.
I would try to get real clarity around who is your ideal customer profile right now.
Right.
I don't mean forever, over the long arc of the company's existence. I'm talking about right now. Who can we reach out to right now to get into conversations the fastest, to potentially win deals sooner, so we can get some momentum, so we can get people using the product, breaking the product, pushing us to innovate, all of this kind of thing. If you've got a product and you can kind of sell to everybody, you're really selling to nobody right now. You can't call real estate on one call, insurance on the next, lawyers on the next, developers on the next, and have any kind of get into any kind of rhythm with it all. So I just kind of encourage people to look for some low-hanging fruit initially. And this is where you get the practice and the repetition. You start to learn about the buyer persona, what makes them tick and what things they really care about and why this person didn't buy. And I'm hearing this as a theme consistently. Why these people are taking meetings and are buying. I'm learning about that as a theme. It's like I want to master one thing, one domain before I try to expand over to the next. That's probably one of the very first things that I sit with people and talk about is like, okay, Al, who are we selling to here? That's a lot of people. Let's shrink it down. Who can we get a hold of the fastest? Right. That really helps.
And that's an interesting one as an editing tool is who can we get hold of the fastest? Is that usually because you have access, or is it usually because they have, as Perry Marshall says, more of a bleeding neck? You know, they have more of a pain point that you can address.
I would say more of access.
Right.
Because even if I'm trying to go after people that have this bleeding neck, as you call it, if I can't reach them, how am I supposed to help them?
Sure.
Right. So this is an exaggerated example, but you know, there's some industries and business owners that you can call that pick up the phone, they pick up their mobile all the time, like real estate agents,
right.
Contractors, people like this. Those people are a lot easier to get a hold of than somebody who's in the C-suite at a
Definitely.
technology company, or even a doctor who has people at the front desk who are fielding phone calls that can't make certain decisions. So even if my software can serve all of these people, I might start off in the place where can I get into conversations quicker? And there's a lot of learning that has to happen. There's a lot of failing that has to happen. And taking your big swings early on with some of your potentially best clients one day is not necessarily the right move.
Very, very interesting points. As you said, to go through that learning curve, you need to actually have those feedback loops of interaction and getting that piece of information in, good reactions or otherwise. Absolutely, absolutely. So what is one valuable free resource that you could direct some of our listeners or viewers to that will help them along this path?
Well, I mean, most podcasts are free resources, whether
Absolutely.
It's this one or my podcast, the Surf and Sales podcast, or the thousands that are out there. People should take advantage of that. There's also a lot of communities that are free where you have the opportunity to network with people, get their support, you know, get their ideas, help with deal flow, help find jobs, all this kind of thing. And a lot of them are free or inexpensive, right?
Outstanding.
And that's where I would start, I suppose.
And tell us a little bit further about your sales and surf and sales podcast.
Yeah, it's called the Surf and Sales Summit, and I started it in 2017. It's a micro sales conference. We spend half the day talking about sales and leadership and entrepreneurship and things like that, and we spend the second half of the day surfing. And 80% of people who come have never surfed before. So we get surf instructors to come and teach people how to surf, and we eat good food and have drinks and just enjoy, you know, nature and being out of our comfort zone. And so about three times a year, I take 20 people down to Costa Rica from all over the world. We've had people from the UK, Switzerland, Australia, Canada,
awesome,
as well as the US. So it's a good time.
Excellent excuse to go to Costa Rica.
Yeah, exactly. It's part learning opportunity and business expense, and part vacation and good time.
Outstanding. So what might be your Final question. So what might be your number one insight or principle you could offer to people on how to negotiate or build rapport or connection or uncover some hidden value with clients or counterparts?
Well, I think that this just goes to asking the right questions. The better you are at asking questions, the right questions at the right time, and then shutting up and listening and really absorbing, what's going on with your prospect, that helps build some trust. You use the word rapport, but trust, rapport, where you feel like, okay, I might be able to help Al might be able to help me, like we're on the same page here. And those things tend to make negotiation go a lot smoother. If I really enjoy talking to somebody, I feel good about working with them. They might come to me and say, "Hey, I'd love to work with you. Like, I know your cost is X, but I can only afford Y." I might say yes. I just did this 2 weeks ago. I told somebody, my rates, and they took a couple of days and came back and they said, "Listen, we want to make this work. This is the only budget that we have. Like, I understand it's not your normal rate." And I said, "You know what? Fuck it. Let's do it." Right.
Awesome.
Because I feel like I can make an impact, and I felt they feel like I can make an impact. And sometimes it's just about working with the right people and getting to good outcomes more than it is maximizing every dollar, that you can. So
I couldn't agree more, and beautifully put. Thank you, Scott. So Scott, where can people find out more about you? Where can they reach out to you?
Easiest place to reach out to me is via LinkedIn. I reply to every DM that I get on there, and you can check out surfandsales.com for the sales conference and the podcast that I was talking about.
Outstanding stuff. And you have your main hub website, of course, which is scottleese.consulting.com. That's SCOTTLEESE consulting.com. So outstanding stuff. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.